Welcome to Flock Talk. I'm Erin Morgan, and I work for the members of the Ontario Sheep Farmers. Today, I'm pleased to welcome Kelly Somerville from the Livestock Research and Innovation Corporation, or LRIC for short. Kelly recently joined LRIC as their CEO. She is originally from Mountain, Ontario, south of Ottawa, and graduated from the University of Guelph with a bachelor's degree in animal science. Previously, she worked for Cargill as a ruminant nutritionist working primarily with dairy herds, before returning to Guelph to take the role of member relations manager with the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. Most recently, Kelly was working as a programs analyst with the Ontario Soil and Crop Improvement Association. Kelly owns a small herd of purebred Angus cattle with her twin sister under the prefix Twin Valley Cattle Co., and is actively involved in showing and judging beef cattle. She's involved in several boards and show committees and is currently serving as Vice President of the Ontario Angus Association. Thanks for joining me, Kelly.
Thanks so much for the intro, Erin. And actually, I guess that information should be updated. I wasn't even there, but was elected president of the Ontario Angus Association. So that's another new and exciting challenge, I guess.
Congratulations. That's fun. So, what drew you to the role with LRIC?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And to be honest, I first started with LRIC back in September of 2023 under the role of Industry Services Manager. So that was a little bit different than the role I currently hold. And to be honest, I had never even heard of LRIC when I first saw the job posting. But when I was reading up on kind of what it all included, I just got really excited at the idea. It seemed to blend so many things I was passionate about. You know, you mentioned that personally, like I have livestock. I've always been in the industry. I care so much about moving the industry forward. And it just seemed like LRIC was at this intersection of so many moving parts and had this ability to really influence some big decisions being made that will have effect for all livestock species. So that was a really big piece of it. And just I love connecting people. I love networking and getting to meet and be in those rooms where these big, important discussions are happening and to have a voice at the table. So that was really what drew me to the role initially. It was a great opportunity to work with a lot of organizations I was already familiar with. So that includes the commodity groups and the University of Guelph, and then certainly got to make connections in a lot of new organizations as well.
Wow. So, you've mentioned a lot of different groups that you connect with. Can you give us an overview of what LRIC does and who the members are?
Yeah, so that's a great question because I know LRIC is a bit of a funny organization. I always say like there really isn't an equivalent. So LRIC, we always kind of use this analogy where if you have a Venn diagram with industry, government, and academia in three circles and where they intersect, that funny space in the middle is really where LRIC operates. So we do a lot of connecting and networking between those groups. We have a lot of representation of the different livestock groups in the province. So actually all of them are members of LRIC. So we have kind of two membership streams. We have our founding members, which is beef, dairy, pork, and poultry. And poultry actually comprises all four feather boards. So that's eggs, turkeys, Ontario Broiler Hatching Egg and Chick Commission, and chicken farmers as well. So that's all four feathers. And then we have our partner members. So that's sheep farmers, aquaculture, veal. So that's some of the smaller member groups. But there's also kind of industry groups that are active in livestock that aren't necessarily representing specific commodities. So that includes Meat and Poultry Ontario, Life Sciences Ontario, All Tech, Grand Valley Fortifiers, Ag Sites. There's kind of a big mix in there of nonprofit and some agribusinesses. So we have really great representation kind of along the value chain that way, from primary producers to some of those agribusinesses that are supplying and working with those groups, and certainly have a vested interest in livestock groups and the sector succeeding. So we've got this kind of jumble of all these members, and then we also have a TPA or transfer payment agreement with the ministry. So OMAFA is also a stakeholder in LRIC. We work very closely with the University of Guelph, just because that tends to be where ag research happens in Ontario. So we also have sitting at our board table ex officios representing the University of Guelph and OMAFA as well.
Wow. That's a lot of people. So, so that's a lot of people sitting at the table. And how do you work together to set goals to, meet the needs of the livestock sector in Ontario with so many diverse groups and opinions?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I'm still learning. So LRIC funding is actually split into two different streams. So that kind of influences how we go about making these decisions and setting goals. So we've got our transfer payment agreement with the ministry. We work with them to set an annual work plan that includes our deliverables. And then at the board table, we also have our members sitting there, and they can determine a lot of what member priorities might be going forward. So if you look at our strat plan, there's kind of 5 tiers there, and it's a really overarching document. But ultimately, we try to distill that into activities for the year with input from our friends at OMAFA and our members sitting at the board table. So it can be, like I said, I'm still learning the process. We've just gone through our kind of year end. We've submitted our annual work plan. I think we've got some exciting things happening, and we have that strat plan will be reviewed every year. So that also gives an opportunity for members to kind of engage, give some input if they think LRIC is on track or if they want to see us go into some different areas. One of the biggest strengths that LRIC has is we're a small organization staff-wise. Yes, we have this huge network of members and stakeholders, but we are quite a small organization, so we don't have a lot of bureaucracy embedded into our organization. We can move very quickly from one thing to the next. So as a priority or a goal is identified, we can try to tackle that right away. We don't have to have a lot of lead time for it. And then if something's not working out, we fail fast. We can pivot and we can find something new to move on to. So I think that that nimbility really allows us to set goals, reach them, and then kind of keep moving.
So you listed a lot of members, and some of those members, like ourselves, are quite small. How do you work with our smaller commodity organizations to support the research and development at our level?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of different players there and a huge difference in size, both in membership and revenue, right, across these groups. So it's definitely a challenge, but we do offer the same research services to all of our member organizations, regardless of size. So we actually administer a research platform, Smart Simple, that all of our members have access to run research calls. We can do a lot of follow-up through that. We do help, depending on the organization, they'll ask for different levels of involvement and assistance in their research files. So some we go as far as research committee will send us some ideas, we'll take it home, look at it, consult industry people and some others in our network and researchers, get an idea of what is existing in that space and take that back to the committee so they can explore if there's opportunity in a certain subject area. We're always available to work on these priority setting sessions as well. We recently held one with egg farmers at the beginning of April. And again, that's something that members can reach out to and request at any time. So we do work with these groups to do their individual settings, but we also do a cross-sector research priority document that we submit to the ministry every year. And we are planning that cross-sector research priority setting session for the end of May. So that'll be an opportunity for those smaller groups as well to have their voice still at the table and still represented on equal footing as far as a cross-sector research priority day. So we try to make sure that everybody's involved at the table when we're talking cross-species, cross-sector. Everybody has an equal voice. And then, like I said, it's up to you guys to access, the suite of services that we have and our research expertise. And a lot of it is, as a small network, small organization ourselves, it's access to our network too, right? That makes a big difference.
So you've been in the CEO role for a short 8 months. I'm sure it feels like a whirlwind. So how have you been making the role your own? You've stepped into some big shoes with the former CEO who we interviewed not too long ago, and so yeah, I'm really interested in you've been with the organization, you've seen what it does. Where would you like to take it?
Yeah. So when you said 8 months, that actually made me think, and it has been. It does not feel that way.
Yeah.
It simultaneously feels like 8 weeks and 8 years. But certainly I'm still still playing the new card and holding on to that as long as I can, because you're right. Mike McMorris, my predecessor, left some enormous shoes to fill as far as his reputation and connections and what he's built in the industry. So I did inherit LRIC in a really good space. And I was fortunate to have worked under Mike and with Jean Howden. She's our operations person in the organization, had the chance to work with them prior to taking the role. So that made a big difference in understanding the landscape that LRIC is working in. I can't say that I've necessarily made the role my own, because I think when LRIC is as small an organization as it is, the personality and the skill sets of each individual really shape the organization anew every time. So we did onboard a new staff person in December, and the idea was to backfill my role. But in doing that, we kind of sat down, Jean and I, and said, what's the skill set that we have? Kind of did that skills matrix. What do we need? And one thing that I was really passionate about was increasing our research capacity. So really building out that member access to research services and increasing our ability to assist members in that area. So instead of hiring another industry member services rep, we ended up hiring Dr. Stephanie Lamb as our director of research. And Stephanie has a PhD. She comes with a ton of great experience working with the University of Guelph. She's worked with industry as well. So she's got some great connections there. And that made a big difference in our ability, like I said, to just handle and increase that research capacity. We've really focused on building our membership relationships as well. Because I'm new in the role, yes, I may have known these organizations and interacted with them previously, but the dynamic shifts, right? When all of a sudden the buck stops with me and I'm accountable to these members. So I really focused on kind of networking and reaching out, rebuilding or reestablishing those relationships under my new role. And I think that's influenced kind of how I'm seeing the job and what we're doing going forward. So while LRIC is still very nimble and we're doing lots of great stuff, kind of coming back to our roots a little bit in that member service area and research area as we're going forward, and then getting to play in all of the fun, cool, expanding spaces as we go.
Yeah, that is exciting, and I look forward to working with her. And wondered, if you were looking at our organization, with limited resources, and we have some research budget and some opportunities to do new things. Where would you advise us to go as a small organization to get the most from our research budget?
Yeah. So as a fellow small organization, we're used to stretching that dollar pretty far. And I think a lot of organizations in the nonprofit sector are familiar with that feeling, right? It's amazing what we're able to accomplish with the dollars that we have some days. So I'll definitely say it can be a challenge, but it's really focus on your network and focus on building those relationships. Even smaller organizations who maybe you said you guys do have research dollars, and that's a huge get when you're trying to attract new and upcoming early career researchers, right? Mm-hmm. If you can introduce them to industry, introduce them to a few dollars to get them started, something that they can take to other funding streams and try to get matched, that makes a huge impact, and that'll stay with them. And then those researchers really do become committed to you and your industry as their career grows too. So I would say absolutely it's cultivating relationships, and that can be with researchers, that can be with funders, right? Like we mentioned, there's a lot of matching streams available. And the more you understand those programs and can help assist or guide some of those researchers into finding the right fit for what they're looking for, it can make a huge impact. And then even partnering and building relationships with other commodity groups, right? Especially in the ruminant side, you guys have a lot of potential to have some crossover on research with beef or veal and some other groups. So there's a lot of potential there if we make sure that we're focused on people. At the end of the day, it kind of all comes down to people in those relationships. So, and I'll say even it can be as simple as, you want to host an event and having the right connections to bring researchers in and, maybe find a venue with that saves you a little bit of dollars and, the right people to reach out to save money here and there. And you can really devote it to your research fund. And getting the word out there, especially with new early career researchers, there's this huge gap between when they enter research and are looking for what their niche is going to be, what's their expertise. There's this opportunity for you guys to fill that gap for them and expose them to industry and really bring them on farm, introduce them to what some of the real world problems you're facing are, and get them started right from go. And then they have buy-in from your producers. Your producers know that they're accessing or researching issues that are near and dear to their own hearts. And the ultimate buy-in and getting that practice onto the farm will be there.
Interesting. I hadn't really thought of researchers coming in as kind of a unclaimed group, but it sounds like there are some researchers who are sort of graduating looking for opportunities that are kind of undecided in their path. So that's good.
Yeah, we find that a lot. We do run a mentorship program with the University of Guelph. And so it's focused on early career researchers. And we do actually see that quite often that, we have these researchers who may have a subject area expertise, whether they love data or they want to get their hands dirty, they like applied research or whatever it is that they're kind of interested in. And if you can guide that to suit your sector, yeah, you can absolutely get that buy-in. And it doesn't even have to be researchers coming into Guelph and coming into OAC or OVC. It can be engineers through Waterloo, right? We're working with Waterloo quite a bit on some engineering issues and trying to get that livestock engineering angle accessible to them. And there's a whole suite of these young engineers graduating who've never been exposed to agriculture, but they're looking for a possible niche in an area where they can really grow and get some support.
Oh, cool. Okay. So let's go big picture a little bit to end things off. You've been with LRIC for a little while, and you've met the players and met some researchers, and so you have a view of the industry. So if you think of the future of the livestock industry in Ontario, what are the opportunities in research and innovation if we work together?
Just a small question to answer.
Yeah.
I love it. And I love that you framed it as opportunities, because I know in the current climate right now, it can be easy to look at research and just look at all the challenges, right? We're seeing declining funding dollars and the research ecosystem around us is kind of changing. So it's certainly focusing on the opportunity side, keeps it in, forward looking. And I think there's a ton of opportunity. So we want to talk about, for LRIC, we love cross sector, right? Anything that we can apply to multiple species and have and amplify impact is big for us. And every year we submit that cross-sector document, and the top three have been climate change, AMR, AMU, so antimicrobial resistance or use, and emergency or disease preparedness. I think COVID maybe drove that one home too, which was timely. But focusing on that kind of disease and pathogen preparedness right now, that's a huge gap for livestock. And it's every species. So whether it's foot and mouth for ruminants, whether we're looking at ASF for our swine friends or AI, artificial intelligence, AI, not what we're talking about here. We're talking avian influenza. And I always have to specify, because I've made that mistake, especially talking to a room of engineers, and you're mentioning AI, and they are not understanding because you're thinking avian influenza. It can be an awkward mix up, especially, when you throw artificial insemination in the mix, but
Totally.
So we've got this huge opportunity where all of these groups are battling some kind of pending disease pandemic that, regardless of how it's spread or which species we're talking about, they can learn from one another, right? There's Featherboard Command Center is a great resource that poultry's established. And I think some of the other livestock groups could look to that as, how they've managed to bring some resources together to pool their knowledge and their tracking. So there's a lot of opportunity to learn from one another there. There's going to need to have a unified voice, because this will need dollars from everywhere, from industry, from government. It's a huge problem. It's not going anywhere. And it's one of those issues that even if there's an outbreak in another disease, that still affects your own commodity, because at the end of the day, all of those resources get pooled to whatever outbreak is happening. and could potentially detract from what you're trying to prepare for in future. So I think that if we can look forward and get everybody really unified on that issue would be a big one. And the other thing that's kind of near and dear to LRIC's heart is what we call GRIP, or getting research into practice. There's a lot of acronyms that are thrown around, whether it's KTT, KMB, knowledge mobilization, KTT, knowledge transfer and translation. And different organizations use them differently, but we say getting research into practice. And the idea being, getting these researchers in touch with industry, making sure that a research idea from its very concept has industry involved, again, to increase that buy-in and really make sure that it's going to be practical and can get on farm. But we lost extension services in the province in the 90s, and I don't think we fully rebuilt to that capacity we used to have. I know it was Acer Consulting just put out a really good report about KTT and extension and the need to really invest in it. We can't keep looking at it as an option. It's mandatory. We've got to focus on it. And I would love to see, researchers get some incentive for engaging in really effective GRIP. Right now, there isn't. We're asking a lot of our researchers, they have a lot on their plate. And then on top of that, we're saying, okay, go out and be, GRIP experts, or, go out and engage in all this KTT. And there's no incentive for them at the end of the day when they have so many other pulls on their time. So I'd love to see some researchers get incentivized for that. I'd love to see some formalized career streams in that GRIP space, and really make sure that it's seen as it's embedded in that innovation cycle and that research cycle, where we're not just engaging at the end of a project to say, okay, I put out a paper, get it on farm, that it's really something that influences the research that we're doing right from go.
Yep. Well, some really great things for us to focus on, definitely at OSF. I like ending it thinking about GRIP, because that is something that our staff thinks about quite a bit, is how we take the learning and get it in people's hands. And so thanks very much, Kelly. Thanks for coming and onto the podcast today and sharing everything that you know about LRIC.
Thanks so much for having me, Erin. It's been a pleasure. And I should just throw out at the last that, some of the most effective organizations in the GRIP space are some of the smaller ones. I know like sheep farmers and veal farmers are constantly called out as being like a really highly regarded example of effective GRIP. You guys have awesome networks. So kudos to you for establishing and really emphasizing that GRIP piece.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we try, but yeah, it's tough. It's tough to do all the things as a small commodity organization. So I'm glad that somebody's noticing.
Well, we're here when you need us.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks very much.
All right. Take care.
And thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of Flock Talk, please subscribe through your podcast app to receive alerts to our future episodes. And please share our podcast with your friends. For something new at Ontario Sheep Farmers, Ontario Soil and Crop Improvement Association has a new intake of the On-Farm Climate Action Fund for the rotational grazing program. The program guide is now live on the Soil and Crop website at www.ontariosoilcrop.org. And the intake opened today, Wednesday, April 30th at 9 a.m. and will close on Friday, May 9th at 3 p.m. While most of the program remains the same as previous intakes, one significant change to this year's intake is that all applications will need to be accompanied by a rotational grazing management plan, unless the application is to have a plan developed by a qualified third-party consultant. Rotational grazing management plans can be written by qualified consultants or by the farmer themselves, and all rotational grazing management plans will need to meet the minimum requirements as outlined in the program guidelines. To learn more about developing proper rotational grazing management plans, Soil and Crop will be hosting information sessions alongside experts for farmers to learn and ask questions about these plans. These sessions will be found on the Ontario Soil and Crop website, which is again www.ontariosoilcrop.org. For more Ontario Sheep Farmers content, follow us on social media at Ontario Sheep Farmers on Instagram and Facebook, at Ontario Sheep on X, and visit our website at ontariosheep.org.